This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Revolve, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today is the latest episode of The Conscious Resistance Live, my semi-weekly podcast that I produce and bring you hard-hitting investigative journalism, analyzing some of the main news stories that you won't hear anywhere else on the internet, because I pride myself on doing real, actual investigative journalism, whether that's filing open records requests, like some of the stories relate to tonight, or getting on the ground, interviewing people face to face, not simply being another internet commentator who's just reacting to clips, reacting to clips of other things on the internet. I'm doing my best out here to actually bring you some real investigative journalism. So thank you to everybody who has joined me tonight. Truly, truly do appreciate you. And we've got a good show. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on some controversial topics. We're going to be talking about fluoride. I have a brand new article on fluoride out at thelastamericanvagabond.com. We're also going to be talking about some updates on the national fluoride scene, including a clip, an update from Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney for the Fluoride Action Network, who will be joining us for a few moments, just a little 5-minute segment to check in. And then we're going to talk about the immigration deportation issue, which is in some ways very complex and is a very emotional thing. I'll admit that I can get emotional and frustrated watching people support what I think is their own eventual enslavement. Nevertheless, it's important to slow down, to take some time to breathe, and to not get caught up in all the insanity, because that's what the hierarchy enslaving you would prefer, is if we're all just out there arguing with each other and fighting and trying to kill each other instead of having a dialogue, trying to understand these complex issues the best we can. And then the last story we're going to cover today relates to in vitro fertilization and genetics and Peter Thiel and some interesting things. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned for that. But first, I want to tell you guys a couple of things. First off the bat, for those who are interested in hearing me speak in person, which, as I've said before, I think I'm probably best in person. Don't judge me based on my internet presence and whether or not I was rude to you on the internet at one time. I highly encourage you not to do that. But I do think that my in-person events, speaking is one of my better talents, and it's more about the solutions, the journalism, the articles, the podcasts. It's an important piece of this puzzle, but if you can come hang out in person, it's so much cooler. So just want to let you guys know I do have an upcoming event, which is really cool because it's totally different than any other event I've ever done before. This is the Rise and Vibes Music Festival happening May 30th to June 1st, south of Durango, Colorado. So in between Aztec, New Mexico, and Durango, Colorado. This is like music, arts, food, vendors. There's like a beach. There's RV hookups, car camping, regular camping. 3 days. And there's some really talented artists. I don't know what kind of music you guys listen to. I listen to all kinds of things. My favorite artist, Dub FX, is going to be there. You got the original Wailers are going to be there. That's kind of cool. Natalie Rise, another amazing artist we featured here. My buddy Presence, who we featured on here numerous times, is going to be performing. Rising. I will be giving a workshop. You can go to their workshop lineup here. If you check out lineup at the top, you see music, yoga, movement, workshop, play shop, exit and build, how to create the better world we know is possible. They're giving me a workshop on Saturday morning, and I'm super stoked for that, because although this crowd might be more oriented towards, have a good time, reggae, drinking, smoking, hanging out, and just chilling, everywhere I go, I always end up meeting a good person. My talk is called Exit and Build, How to Create the Better World We Know is Possible. There's a little explanation there. They've got some of my background, some links to my websites and stuff. And it's just another avenue to reach new people who might not necessarily know who I am and maybe won't come across me, but I'm coming to them instead. So you can find that at riseandvibes.com. Again, I will say that if you get to come to Rise and Vibes, I'm going to be doing a special performance of Taxation is Theft with my buddy Presence during his set. And so that's all I'll say about that. I will have more news coming very soon. For those who know, I perform conscious hip hop under the name 33. You can find me at 33ishere.com. No, I'm not a Freemason. And I'm going to be doing this workshop, and I'm going to be performing some music, and I'll be doing a little mini tour of the Southwest and Northwest United States, 4 days. That really excited about that because I just love getting out there and talking to people and connecting to people in any way I can. So the other thing I want to share before we dive into today's, oh, by the way, if you want to go to Rising Vibes and you're going to buy a ticket, use code BROZE, and I think you get a discount or something like that. The other thing I want to mention is just today I interviewed David Knight, formerly of InfoWars, who I think has been one of the more consistent people. I consider him part of the Independent Media Alliance, and we're going to try to bring him into a panel very soon because he's one of the people who haven't lost their minds and fallen for Trump or fallen for Musk or fallen for RFK, or even just falling for true black pilling and just being negative and doomers and things like that, but instead is just reporting the honest, factual news, and he's a principled person. So I'm super excited about that. I probably won't release that till next week, but stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, I want to play you guys a very quick clip, just a little teaser to get you excited because David and I touched on so many topics. We talked about his experience prior to getting into independent media, his experience at InfoWars, why he left InfoWars, his thoughts on Alex Jones. We talked about Israel. We talked about Zionism. We talked a little bit about his religious beliefs and about principles and why most people just give up their principles and have none. And yeah, a lot of other things. So you're going to enjoy this conversation. But let's go ahead and play this quick clip. Again, this is David Knight over at the David Knight, I think davidknight.news is his main website. And he does a daily show for like 2 or 3 hours breaking down the news. Great job, super measured, objective, not crazy and just, outrageous. Check this out real quick.
Well, I had when I first got there, I had a lot of autonomy. I could basically cover anything I wanted. And if we didn't agree about something, we always disagreed. He and I disagreed about Elon Musk. He thought he had hung the moon, if not visited it already. So it was, we had a very different opinion about Musk in the early days. And then when Trump came in, everything changed. And, but I was basically free to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to cover the Bundy Ranch thing because I thought it was going to turn into another Waco or something like that if we didn't draw a lot of attention to it. And so I was, like I said, I didn't have to agree with him on things. As a matter of fact, he seemed to want to have people at that point in time that disagreed with him. But that all changed when Trump came on the scene and gave him an interview. I kind of liken it to what happened with Rush Limbaugh, who was kind of his own independent guy until he criticized George H.W. Bush, and Bush invited him for a weekend to the White House and let him sleep in the Lincoln bedroom. And then he just basically became a partisan lapdog at that point on. And so that's basically what happened with Alex. But I had my own independent show there, and I could give my own take on things. And that changed in 2020. We went in very different directions. I had first noticed the fact that the Wuhan nonsense, the bat soup stuff, I didn't believe that from the get-go. And I noticed that they had the only biosafety level 4 lab in China was there. So I thought, oh, maybe there's a connection in that. But then when I saw all of the fake videos of people falling down, young people falling down the street and stuff like that, I knew that it was rigged. And I also knew about Dark Winter. That was 2 months before 9/11. I knew that they'd been planning and practicing all this stuff. I knew that 1 week after 9/11, they had the false flag anthrax attack, and that was used to push out model legislation to the states. And then they practiced it for 20 years. And of course, the feds don't like to have a 10th Amendment challenge to what they're doing. Typically, the way that they get everybody to do what they want to do is by cutting them a check or taking away the money. So they usually do it by bribery or by blackmail. So I could see that was coming. It was right down the path, especially when they would start talking about the mask doesn't protect you, it protects other people. And so I go, that's the same lie that they've sold with.
All right. So that's going to be an interesting one. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. Stay tuned. Like I said, we'll be releasing that. So let's go ahead and move forward now. Let's go ahead and remind you guys, if you want to follow my work, the best place is always going to be theconsciousresistance.com. And if you're not signed up for my newsletter over there, please do. I send out weekly, bi-weekly emails on events I'm doing, my latest articles, my latest interviews, things like that. I also want to remind you guys that, let me go ahead and X this out. If you want to support us, you can also do so by buying shirts or books. Like, let me show you real quick. I don't know if you guys have noticed, I wear this shirt a lot. It says, "You are a creator." This is the Conscious Resistance shirt. It's just got the Conscious Resistance website on the back. It's just another way for you to support me if you want to do so. And you can do that at the website there. So go to theconsciousresistance.com. You'll see a link for shop for books and shirts there in the navigation. And yeah, go ahead and please support me where you can. It is much appreciated. So the first story that we're going to be getting into is relating to fluoride. And I'm really excited about this one because this is an exclusive story. You're not going to find this anywhere else. This is my latest article with The Last American Vagabond. Newly released records confirm Houston, Texas is the largest U.S. city to stop water fluoridation. And that picture right there is a picture of some Houston officials cleaning out the fluoride. You can kind of even see over here, it says fluorosilicic acid, a hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is also known as fluoride. And they're cleaning out these tanks. This is images that I was able to get from doing open records requests. As I mentioned earlier, I try to push myself and do real journalism that does often involve, having to send in requests to the city, to the government, trying to dig in and find like the true, accurate truth for you guys, and not just the bullshit that is already out there and just repeating to you over and over. I want to find some important information that you might not see elsewhere. So let's go ahead and get into this one. All right, newly released records confirm Houston is the largest U.S. city not to be fluoridated, which is kind of cool. You guys know that I'm originally from Houston, so this was, in my mind, kind of a victory for Houstonians. But it's a little interesting because it didn't come from activism. All that activism I've been doing over the years, all the fighting I've been doing, apparently it wasn't that's not what it took. It took, I don't know. But let's get into this. According to newly obtained emails between Houston officials and a confirmed statement from the Public Works Department, the city of Houston has not added fluoridation chemicals to the water supply since at least 2019. The reason for ending the water fluoridation program is currently unknown. Houstonians are still receiving low levels of naturally occurring fluoride from municipal water systems. And just to make that clear, for those who don't know, fluoride is a naturally occurring element. What they usually add to the water is not a naturally occurring element. It is hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is a byproduct of phosphate mining, aluminum mining, and that's a bit different. But yes, there is fluoride in some natural bodies of water, including in Texas. And so Houstonians are still being exposed to low levels of fluoride, but there is not any fluoridation chemicals being added to the water. So let's get a little deeper into this. Houston actually has about 2.5 million people in the city downtown area, in the actual city limits. With all of the different towns and cities and incorporated areas, you got about 7.5 million people in the greater Houston area. So quite a bit of people have been impacted by this lack of fluoride in the water. And there's never even been a notice of this. As I wrote here, the revelation that Houston has not been getting fluoride for the last 5 years makes it the largest U.S. city to end the practice of water fluoridation. But this has never been discussed publicly. This comes about because of a new batch of emails, which I had released to me and that I've been pouring through the last couple months. I might have mentioned this on some shows that I was working on this. And if you're curious, I link directly to the emails here. You can look up these people. You can see that they're real people. But in one email dated October 16, 2024, so just a few months back, Joni Sinach, who's the Senior Division Manager of Houston's Drinking Water Regulatory Compliance Program, states, City of Houston maintains the ability to feed fluoride at the surface and groundwater plants. However, due to the presence of naturally occurring levels within the service area, fluoride has not been actively fed into the system in the past 5 years. And this was coming in response to somebody who had reached out to them, like a local official from a different area of Houston who was asking about their fluoride program. And they said, actually, we haven't been added fluoride in 5 years. So as I've been digging through these emails, trying to more confirmation, I reached out to Miss Joni herself, and we've talked more than a handful of times. But just the other day, I talked to her on the phone, and she said, quote, the best I can tell you is what I've been told is that the last loads of fluoride we received was probably around 2018. That means it may have been added 2018 to 2019, maybe. And she said she was not in her current position until 2021. She said, quote, I don't think it was a formal decision. Now, this gets a little bit convoluted as we go deeper, but that's kind of the first big headline is I've got confirmation from a city official in the Water Regulatory Compliance Program of Houston's Public Works, and her listed in an email back in October 2024 saying that there hadn't been fluoride in the water in at least 5 years. That would place it at October 2019 at minimum. Maybe even, that's about what it seems based on all the research I've done. Again, the interesting thing is the city has never actually acknowledged this. There's no public releases, press conference. There's no local media talking about this. I seem to be the first one to have discovered it. And it's a possibility that the fluoridation program was cut because Houston is like $330 million in debt, and like a lot of big cities. And so when I was running for mayor of Houston years ago, actually, this was one of my rallying cries and saying like, hey, if you want to save the city money, maybe we should stop adding this poison to the water that's costing $1 million a year. And, nobody really wanted to talk about it. The interesting thing is I ran for mayor in 2019 and 2023. And apparently both those times there was no more fluoride being added to the water, and nobody said a thing about it. I've been to city council since then, I think October 2024 actually, and there's no fluoride being added to the water. But not a single person said, hey, Derrick, by the way, we appreciate you coming and thanks for your concerns, but actually this is not a big deal anymore because we're not adding fluoride to the water. It's almost as if somebody didn't want there to be a public knowledge that there was no fluoride in the water. I started looking at all the different contracts, procurement contracts, and I found a $5 million contract for hydrofluorosilicic acid ending January 23rd, 2019. So if that contract ends January 2019, the beginning of the year, and this lady claims in this email that there has been fluoride in the last 5 years, which replaced it October 2019. It's likely that once that contract ended in January 2019, there was no more fluoride. But then this is where things get even weirder. I also found another contract which shows that in April 2022, the city of Houston signed a $1.9 million contract with a company called Penco, and they provide fluoride chemicals and all sorts of other things. And during the discussion on the Penco contract, which I found, there's city council videos, former city council member Michael Kubash spoke against the water fluoridation, noting that Houstonians had previously spoken against the practice. He said, quote, I don't think it's really helping to reduce tooth decay. Nations that don't fluoridate their water have about the same results as the nations that do. And so 2019, one contract ends, no fluoride in the water. And then in 2022, they sign a new contract saying that that's for fluoride, for hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's specifically what it's for. Let's just go ahead and open this up and show you guys on the screen here. So what this means to me, here, we'll go to Penco. You can see right here, item number 41, City Council, Penco for hydrofluorosilicic acid for Houston Public Works, 3 years with 2-year option, $1.96 million, tagged by Houston council member. Was presented, Kubash voting no, the balance voting aye, motion adopted. So in April 2013, they adopt a motion for a contract for fluoride chemicals, but the lady at the city is telling me that there's no fluoride in the water. So this got me really kind of confused and thinking and looking. So despite this $1.9 million 3-year contract, the water quality reports from the city of Houston from 2019, I checked them all the way going back to 2015, and you could clearly see that there was fluoride levels at 0.7, 0.6, and then at about 2019, they start dropping down. And so from 2019 up till 2023, which is the latest one we have, the fluoride levels are consistently lower than the 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is recommended by the CDC. Measurements taken across East, North, and South Houston reveal levels between fluoride between 0 and 0.4 milligrams per liter, which is what they're saying is the naturally present, natural fluoride present in the water. That doesn't mean that that's not causing harm, because fluoride can cause harm even if it's natural or not. We don't know at the very low levels what it does, but I think we could assume it's not good to just be exposed to it all. So this indicates that the fluoride chemicals have not been added to the water supply since 2019, and that it's only present because of this naturally occurring fluoride levels. And here's a little graphic I found in one of the emails. You can see they're measuring fluoride, and this is in milligrams per liter. This is from April 16, 2023, so 2 years ago. And the target, that red line, is the 0.7 milligrams per liter recommended by the CDC. And you can see that when they test it, they're consistently, the highest it was is about 0.5, maybe just over 0.5, 1, 2, 3, 4 times that year, or just around that time when they were testing it. But on average, it's at 0.4, down here looks like maybe close to 0.3. So it's obviously not being added to the water. This makes things even more weird, but it does align with what I was told by the woman at the City of Houston, where she said, that City of Houston, quote, maintains the ability to feed fluoride at surface and groundwater plants, which means that they might have bought the fluoride in 2022 and then just decided not to add it to the water supply. I also have a feeling that there could be something else going on, because I did file an open records request to the City of Houston asking for all contracts and information related to City of Houston contracts with Penco, the company that they bought the fluoride from in 2022. And right now the City of Houston is trying to appeal this to the state attorney general and saying that, I shouldn't be able to get access to this information. So it could just be that they're hiding contracts and trade secrets, but something about that isn't right. They haven't added fluoride to the water since at least 2019. That's what the City of Houston's own records show. That's what the emails that I found, including this email saying that the water hasn't been added to the water in 5 years. But then 3 years later, they sign a nearly $2 million contract for fluoride, but none of the levels measuring fluoride have gone up. Now, when we get the 2024 levels, which usually happens by June or July, we'll see what it says. But like I said, from 2019, 2021, 2021, 22, and 23, which is after when they signed the contract, the levels have stayed consistently at 0.3, 0.35, things of that sort. So it's weird. Either they just bought the fluoride and they didn't do anything with it, which doesn't make any sense. That's still wasting taxpayer dollars. They bought it and they're waiting to use it later, or somebody's laundering money or something. I don't know. I definitely got my spidey sense going off that something ain't right. Let's go ahead here, show you some more things that I found. So there's a little town, part of Houston that was annexed in 1994 called Kingwood. It's northeast of Houston, and they get their water from the city. And I found one email which includes a presentation with 2 images highlighting the removal of fluoride from Kingwood's tanks in January 2024. This is that image I was showing you earlier. And this is just part of this PowerPoint presentation that they had at this image. Waste transports, Kingwood, fluoride and phosphate removal, January 2024, shows them loading the tanks into a truck. And then it right here says old fluoride and phosphate from Kingwood A, B, and C removed and tanks cleaned. Chemicals sent to U.S. Ecology in Robstown, Texas for proper disposal. And you can see these guys are wearing hazmat suits as they clean this stuff because it's toxic. So that was interesting. That's another confirmation that they are not adding fluoride in there because they're cleaning it out and getting rid of it. So I don't think they would be adding it to it. And then interestingly, you guys know that I've covered the National Toxicology Program report, the fluoride lawsuit, et cetera. There's been extensive reporting here on this channel at thelastAmericanVagabond.com. And in the emails I found, there's even city officials, like in September 6, 2024, one of the city officials asked another colleague about the judge's ruling in the federal lawsuit and says, quote, what does this mean to us in the long run if EPA reduces the permissible levels or even bans the fluoridation of drinking water? So in the background, while people like me are showing up to city council, the city is talking about this. They're very aware that this lawsuit's going on. Another email shows a resident of Houston speaking to someone, requesting to speak with somebody from the city regarding new, quote, high quality studies. This is just from a concerned Houstonian said, I had a question about water fluoridation process, particularly if it's still necessary now that the EPA released a report of high quality studies indicating that it's harmful to children and actually has no impact on health. I would love to speak to someone on the matter. As far as I could tell, they never spoke to anybody. Nobody ever got back to them, or they sent them the standard statement. Now, there's some more here in this article. If you guys want to learn more, I do encourage you to check it out because I found some interesting Houston history, actually, that Houston started fluoridating in 1980. There was an ordinance that passed. So that was 45 years ago. And that was at 1 part per million, which is definitely higher than what they're recommending now because they've realized over time that it's not helpful and it's bad for you. And I found this article in the Selma Times Journal from May 13th, 1979, discussing this battle going on in Houston, where as they were trying to push for water fluoridation, different Houstonians were upset and were trying to say, no, we don't want to do that. And so the city of Houston actually organized a 3-panel committee, including professors from University of Houston, Rice University, TSU. And the article says the committee reported that it found several possible adverse effects of fluoridated water. These adverse effects included skeletal fluorosis, fluoride allergies, difficulties for individuals suffering from kidney disease, and a reference to an increase in the growth of cancer cells in animals. And eventually, the city did pass this ordinance starting to fluoridate in 1980, and this led to a lawsuit from this group called Safe Water Foundation of Texas, which they eventually lost. But I did find those court records and everything like that. And it's just interesting to me because this is Houston's my hometown, and Houston's been fluoride free for 5 years. I've been fighting for that since 2012 at least, and apparently it just happened all on its own. Here's the article I was talking about in the Selma Times. Let me go ahead and see if I can show you guys this one. No, it's not showing me the clip. Well, this is the article. I'll share it. I'll link it to you guys later if you want to see it. But it's just interesting to me because this is, like I said, my hometown, something I've been fighting for. We're going to talk in a moment about the national issues of fluoride. And yeah, Houston is now the largest city in the United States not to have fluoride in the water. And it didn't happen necessarily through activism. It kind of just happened. I don't know. We don't really know the full reasons, but I will definitely stay on this. So please share this article. You can find it at The Last American Vagabond. You can also find it at derrickbroze.substack.com. Now let's talk about fluoride on the national level for a moment. A couple of things here. You guys may remember that I mentioned at the end of the Biden administration, Joe Biden's administration announced that they were going to appeal the federal court ruling, which came out last year. You guys remember I was in San Francisco in February and March of last year for 2 weeks reporting on the federal lawsuit. We waited all year for something to happen. And come September, they finally ruled, and the judge ruled in favor of the Fluoride Action Network, saying that the EPA must act because fluoride poses an unreasonable risk and we need to know more. And we were just like, okay, cool. That's awesome. What's going to happen? Are they going to appeal it? And at the last minute, the Biden administration did indeed appeal it. And then, of course, Biden's gone. Now Trump's in office and, Maha, RFK, all this kind of stuff. The question has been, are they going to appeal it too? Or are they going to say, you know what? We're going to overturn this EPA appeal and we're going to listen to the court and we're going to, start making some rules about fluoride, which obviously the most common sense thing to do is just to ban it outright. So now we have an update on that situation here. This is coming from Bloomberg Law. EPA allowed extra month to craft path forward on fluoride appeal. So the EPA under Donald Trump, they asked for an additional month to decide if they're going to appeal because their deadline to appeal was going to be this Friday, tomorrow. They were supposed to file if they were going to, go ahead and appeal. But a federal appeals court has given the EPA until mid-May now to file its opening brief, appealing a district court's ruling that fluoride in drinking water is so risky the agency must address health concerns in some way. This extension request was filed on Tuesday, which, as we're going to show in a moment, came right after the EPA was making some other big moves about fluoride. So it's kind of weird. On one hand, they're making announcements saying that they're going to start studying all the fluoride stuff again. They're going to look at everything they can, but then they're also asking for an extra 30 days to decide how they're going to handle this appeal. In reality, if Trump and Maha and RFK and everybody were really about getting to the bottom of fluoride, then just end the appeal and just follow the court's ruling. So we're going to have to see what happens. But now the can has been kicked down a little bit further to May 12th. And we're going to hear from Michael Connett, the lead attorney who fought the federal lawsuit since 2017 and was successful in that in just a moment to get his thoughts on that. But a couple more things here. This is one you might have seen going around. At the CDC, Trump's administration job cuts wipe out a wide array of specialists. Now, I'm not going to really cry about the CDC, losing some jobs. This is part of the whole effort to shrink the government. Some good, some bad. Some of the good I'll tell you about here is this: the oral health division. One CDC employee told Stat that their entire branch of HIV prevention has been eliminated. Well, whether or not you believe HIV is real, that's, good or bad thing. Another in the CDC's oral health division said virtually every employee has been eliminated. The oral health department promoted fluoride in water, which Trump and Kennedy have planned to ban nationally, allegedly. That is a good thing, my friends. The oral health division being kind of eliminated altogether, because let me go here now. Let me show you real quick at thelastamericanvagabond.com. If you go there and you find all of my articles about fluoride, especially if you followed during the fluoride lawsuit, you guys know that, like, for example, if you don't know this reporting, you need to go back and look at it because I did a lot of good reporting and you need to know about it. But there was emails that were released during the fluoride lawsuit, and I called them the fluoride emails. There was a lot of details that were released specifically showing that scientists from the CDC's oral health division, these are all my articles, 5 pages since 2020 of articles I've been writing for TLab. You can go through there and look up the fluoride emails. I encourage you to check that out, because what we found out is that the fluoride, the oral health division at the CDC, not only do they have an extensive connection with the American Dental Association, which is one of the biggest lobbyist groups for water fluoridation, they also were in these emails listed as trying to slow down the National Toxicology Program, trying to prevent these scientists from reaching their conclusions, which showed that fluoride is indeed a neurotoxin and is lowering IQ in children. So I think that's a good move. If RFK and then want to get rid of the oral health division, I'm not going to cry about that. I can't speak to all the other changes that were made. Now, here's another one. On Monday, RFK, he's in Salt Lake City for a press conference because Utah has just banned fluoride. And he was there with Lee Zeldin, who's the head of the EPA right now. And the EPA announced they will, quote, expeditiously review new science on fluoride in drinking water. So again, generally, this is a good move. He says, quote, without prejudging any outcomes, when this evaluation is completed, we will have an updated foundational scientific evaluation that will inform the agency's future steps to meet statutory obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act. And he talks about how Kennedy's been in front of this issue. They mentioned the National Toxicology Program, which found moderate confidence that fluoride is lowering IQ in children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So this seems to be generally a good move. And as you can see, I tweeted here when it came out. I showed the press conference with RFK, Lee Zeldin in Utah. I said, this is a good move. But look what Michael Connett says back to this. Again, Michael Connett's the lawyer who fought the lawsuit. I'm very wary of EPA's announcement. Zeldin never mentioned that EPA is already under a court order to take regulatory action to address fluoride's unreasonable risk to human health. Under the court order, EPA must initiate rulemaking proceedings under the Toxic Substance Control Act to issue a rule that will eliminate risk. And he goes on from there. This is, again, when the deadline was on Friday. And he said, if the EPA does file the appeal, as it looks they will, this will likely say more about the EPA's true intentions with fluoride than a commitment to do another review, especially since the EPA's reviews of fluoride literature in the past have been atrocious. And I think that's, it's like on one hand, I'm saying, hey, this is generally a good move. Michael's like, hey, maybe not so fast. If they were really making a good move, they would just listen to the court, as I was saying a moment ago. But let's go ahead actually and hear from Michael right now. Michael, I've interviewed him on this channel a couple of times when I was at the fluoride lawsuit and then last year for some updates. But he sent me a special video exclusively for us here at the Conscious Resistance, a little 5-minute clip of him discussing all the latest fluoride updates and why he's skeptical about this EPA announcement. So check this out.
Monday, Robert Kennedy, the Secretary of the HHS, announced that he will be instructing the CDC to stop promoting water fluoridation. That's a very significant development because the CDC is by far the most aggressive proponent of water fluoridation in the United States at the governmental level, and many communities across the country are fluoridating their water based on the CDC's recommendation. So that was a really positive development. There was another announcement on Monday in tandem with Mr. Kennedy's announcement. That was from the EPA. Lee Zeldin, the administrator of EPA, announced that the agency will be conducting, quote, an expeditious review of the new science on fluoride's dangers. And some cheered that news and welcomed it. But I am more skeptical and concerned about it. And here's why. We don't need the EPA to do another review right now. What we need the EPA to do is follow the court's order from last year, where the court ordered the EPA to implement a rulemaking proceeding to eliminate the unreasonable risk posed by adding fluoridation chemicals to drinking water. The federal court found that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to the brain in the form of reduced IQ in children. And based on that finding, the court ordered the EPA to take regulatory action. The court didn't ask EPA to do another review of the science. The court ordered the EPA to take action. So that's what we need from the EPA now is action, not another review, particularly in the context of EPA's previous reviews on fluoride, which have consistently been, to put it mildly, inadequate and superficial. So I am concerned that the EPA is taking the approach of let's do another review, kick the can down the road a little bit, make it seem like we're doing something, but in reality, they may have a, preordained conclusion that will not result in changing current water fluoridation practices in the United States. So what I really wanted to see happen on Monday is Zeldin announced that the EPA is standing down on its appeal of the court order, because the EPA announced in January, before the new administration came into office, the EPA announced that it would be appealing the court's order, which will take a year to 2 years to complete. So it was a significant delay in taking action. And so what we've been looking for with the new administration is for the EPA to say, we're not going to appeal the court's order and we're going to begin the rulemaking proceeding. That's what I've been looking for. And we didn't get that on Monday. All we got was a commitment to do a, quote, expeditious review. Now, one other development is yesterday, so on Tuesday, just a day after Zeldin announced that EPA will be doing this new review, EPA requested an extension of time to file their appeal of the court's order. Under the existing deadline, EPA needed to file its appeal this Friday, April 11th, and EPA asked for an extension, which the Ninth Circuit quickly granted. So now EPA has until May 12th to file its appeal. Now, my hope is that this extension that EPA has been granted will give the agency time to regroup and come up with a coordinated approach to the fluoride issue and stand down on the appeal, and use this time to basically come up with an agency position that says, we're not going to appeal the court order, we're going to move into a rulemaking proceeding, we're going to protect the American public from this risk in their water supply. That's what we need. We need the EPA to take action in the form of a nationwide ban on water fluoridation. From sea to sea, no more water fluoridation. We need to follow the path of Western Europe, which has already, or actually all of Europe, which has by and large already rejected water fluoridation. We need to follow Europe's lead. EPA has the authority to do it. It needs to act now. We don't need another review. So that's the latest developments from this week.
Yeah, that's the latest on fluoride. Fluoride is no longer in Houston's water. The EPA is claiming they're going to do a review, while at the same time they're asking for more time to review this appeal instead of acting on the court orders. And so we'll keep you guys updated to see what happens and as these developments come in. Issue and an emotional issue. Let's take a deep breath and a quick break for our sponsor, the Above Phone. We'll be right back.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins. No advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides, and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com
abovephone.com. That's the only phone I even bother. I don't have a phone, but my partner Miriam uses it, but the only one I trust. I don't trust any of the other alleged privacy phones, and especially none of them associated with Eric Prince. All right, guys, let's go ahead and talk about this immigration deportation issue. I've touched on this in recent weeks, and I see the comments out there. Every time I post about this, I get people who are genuinely supportive and sympathetic to the things I'm expressing, which is that this is a step towards totalitarianism for the American people, and just setting, go through your social media and say you posted anti-Semitic things, or they can say you were protesting, being anti-Semitic against Israel, whatever, and deport you. Now, many people don't have much sympathy because they're saying, well, these people are illegal, they shouldn't have come here. Or let's say with the students who are being deported, they're like, well, are they American citizens? If not, get hot and testy with this, because I don't believe that. I think that one of the beautiful things about the United States, and the way I've always interpreted it, is that all people are given the basic human rights. Doesn't mean you're allowed to stay if you came illegally, although I don't think the government should be in charge of borders. And that's a whole other country. The United States, and who end up in the United States are going to be treated with dignity and as a human being, even if they're being deported out of the country. That means they'll be granted due process, told what they're being held for, told what they're being charged for, told why they're being deported, etc. And I see that some of you out there in the comments don't agree with that. You think, screw these people. I voted for. And I know that most of you probably aren't in my audience. I'm sure there are some conservatives out there who are like, yeah, I hear you, Derrick, but crime has been bad, and we need to do something about it. So I don't think there's too many hardcore Trumpers in my audience, but you pop up every now and then. And in case you are tuned in, I want you to really listen to some of these stories I'm going to go over. Because like I said, I know this is a complex topic. I know that it's an emotional topic. And when I'm in the comment section duking it out with people, and I see some of you saying these hateful things, yeah, it's very, very, very difficult for me not to see that and then want to punch back and want to say something hateful or ugly. Like lately, I've just been getting good at just banning people, not because I don't have an argument, because it's just not good for my mental health. So I've been reminding myself to just take a deep breath and recognize that some people on the other side, they probably are the same thing. They're probably like, why does this idiot not understand what I'm saying? Why can't he see how this is the greatest thing ever? Trump is delivering on promises, etc. But as we're about to go through, there have been some really problematic situations that have been unfolding. Students who are facing deportation. And we're going to start with this man from Maryland who has already been deported. He's in the El Salvador prison for gangs, despite not having been shown to have caused any crime, despite not having been adequately proven to be a gang member. And there are some weird things in there, right, where he was accused of being a gang member in the past. But let's just be real. The U.S. government has not provided any hard evidence that this man is involved in human trafficking, as I've seen people claim. I saw the press secretary saying they haven't provided any evidence that he was involved in crimes in the United States or back home where he's from. And they haven't provided any evidence that he is a gang member, but he is being deported. And this is, of course, set off all kinds of lawsuits. And that's where we're going to dive in, guys. I want to try to see if we can take as an objective look at this issue as possible and really suss out what's going on. So let's go ahead and start here. The real story of the Maryland father deported to El Salvador by mistake. And that's one thing to acknowledge, that, yes, the Trump administration does admit it was a mistake. They call it an administrative error. Now, I think that's kind of a messed up thing to say, because think about it. And this man's name is Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, who was here on a legal status. Yes, he was supposed to be deported at one point, but he proved to the U.S. government or to a judge, that he was in danger if he was sent out of the United States and back to El Salvador, and that he could face torture and violence and things of this sort. The U.S. government claims that he is an MS-13 gang member, although they haven't provided any evidence of that. And like I said, he doesn't have a criminal history. He's never been charged with a crime in the U.S., El Salvador, or anywhere else, which is kind of rare. If you're a gang member, you're out there doing gang stuff, you're usually going to get caught. You're going to have some kind of record. Doesn't mean he couldn't possibly still be a gang member, but I'm just saying there's no record of it, right? So here's where things get a little tricky, though. In 2019, during an immigration hearing, a judge issued a removal order, but added a clause saying that he could not be removed to El Salvador because there was enough evidence he could be persecuted if he returned. you should have deported him somewhere else because he was on this order saying he could be tortured. Instead, they sent him to El Salvador and into a violent prison known for other gang members. Now, people say, well, why is it that he was at risk? Allegedly, that's because he was involved in some different gang activity. Well, he tells the story, reading the court records. Nowhere in those court records does the government actually provide any evidence. They simply say that at one point an informant said that he was affiliated with a gang. They were never able to prove it. And like I said, they were going to deport him, but one judge put the order on hold saying, he can't go to El Salvador. And he did have appointments coming up. That's the other thing, is he was keeping up with all of his appointments. And here he is right here. You can see him being dragged in this video on the left with these masked men looking scary and crazy. And his family was able to identify him here because of the scars on his head and the tattoos on his arm. And look, yes, tattoos can be a sign of gang members. Baseball caps of certain kind can be, but also it can be complete bullshit. And the U.S. government has tried to say that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat in one picture and that meant he was a gang member, or that his tattoo had a crown on it and that means he was a gang member. And these things have happened. I've covered some weeks ago about a soccer player being deported, people who are not involved with any criminal activity. So I'm going to put all these in the show notes, and I just want you to look through them because I'm not going to read every single one of these articles. But again, he has a wife. He's got 2 children from a previous relationship. They had a child together. All 3 of the kids are special needs. He was arrested and detained in March 2019. Remember, that's what I was saying. Like, he got detained because he was hanging outside of a Home Depot. She said he was looking for work. And the police arrest him and some other guys, and they eventually do let them go. And you can see here, look, he's reported personal report record for Department of Homeland Security, Immigration, Order of Supervision, October 2020, October 2021, October 2023, January 2024. So he was meeting all of his appointments, October 2022 as well. He kept meeting. He wasn't running away. He wasn't hiding. This guy, by all intents and purposes, seems to very much be a person that was just living his life. And yes, he may have came illegally originally, but was trying to do his best, and he was waiting to see, what was going to happen to him. So a Department of Homeland Security spokesperson told Newsweek the judge found that he was MS-13 and then granted him protection from a rival gang. But his wife and his attorney say that there's no evidence evidence to support this unfounded allegation. The allegation to the MS-13 goes back to his initial arrest. Again, this is Maryland, March 2019. Dropped him off at Home Depot. He gets arrested. And she says, his wife says, I attended his bond hearing and was shocked when the government said he would stay detained because he's an MS-13 gang member. He is not. He's never been a gang member. Now, it could just be a wife protecting her husband, but I think she's never seen any evidence of that. He was denied bond because officials argued there was sufficient evidence to show he was a verified member of MS-13. So this is what the conservatives are seizing on and saying, see, look, they're saying there's plenty of evidence. His attorneys claimed, and ICE later confirmed, that the only verification of this alleged gang affiliation was a form filled out by the police department in Prince George County, which based his membership on the fact that he was, quote, wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, and that a confidential informant, you know how reliable those people are, advised that he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western Clique, a group based out of Long Island. And his lawyer at the time that it was so clear that they had absolutely no evidence that Kilmar was ever a gang member, yet they made us prove that he was not one. After the judge issued the removal order with the bar on deportation in El Salvador, he was released to be with his family. His wife testified that he continued to work supporting his family, and he secured an apprenticeship as recently as September 2024. And then he ends up getting pulled over. He ends up getting deported. And so there's a lot of different questions about whether or not it should have even happened. And, there's still no evidence. J.D. Vance has claimed he's a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. Again, there was no conviction anywhere on his record. There's this claim that he was a gang member by some informant that the police department had, but that's never been proven anywhere in a court of law. They've never found anything to really prove this allegation. Another one I'll include in the link here is just his attorney attorney for father deported in error says that what is happening is new, unique, and terrifying. I think you need to watch that. I'm not going to play a clip there, but all these will be in the show notes. This one is, I think, interesting because it's coming from the National Review, which is a conservative outlet, right? And so it's not some liberal rag saying open borders, free immigration. but the author's really trying to look at this situation objectively. And they go through all the pieces, some of which we just covered here, but there's a couple of things I want to mention here. Okay, here we go. The government has also cited the fact that Garcia was wearing a Chicago's Bulls hat when he was picked up. MS-13 had adopted the Bulls Devil Horns logo. Obviously, there are thousands of law-abiding Bulls fans out there, even in Maryland. The immigration judge said she was, quote, reluctant to give evidentiary weight to his clothing as an indication of gang affiliation, though she was convinced enough by the word of the confidential informant to deny his bond when he came before her in 2019. That's not the same as a judicial finding of evidence of gang membership, much less a criminal conviction. I thought that there was substance to the charge that he was in MS-13. So that is one interesting element, that the judge, she did deny his initial bond before they put the hold on deporting him. Given it was merely a bond hearing, his attorney was not entitled to cross-examine the officer who put forward the informant's account and who attested that the informant had a reliable record. That officer, it should be noted, was later suspended for reasons apparently unrelated to the case. That's interesting, right? So his attorneys didn't even get a chance to cross-examine the officer and say, well, what do you base this on, et cetera, et cetera. So none of that was ever done because it was just a bond hearing. It wasn't like an actual trial. Nothing in the Immigration Appeals Board's subsequent decision to block his deportation to El Salvador suggests that the authorities came to doubt his membership in the gang. That decision was based on the danger to Garcia of being returned to his country of origin. And says, if in fact he was a member of MS-13, that membership might explain why Barrio 18, a major MS-13 rival, was apparently targeting him, which is one of the reasons he claimed that there was this gang after him. And so they're saying, well, that gang happens to be a rival of MS-13. It could be that he was part of the gang, and that's why they're coming after him. However, Garcia managed to remain in the U.S. for more than 10 years without developing any criminal record beyond 3 traffic citations for driving without a license. His clean record makes Dudley, his attorney, very, very skeptical of his membership in the gang. Were he a gang member, he would most likely have some kind of criminal record. Is Garcia, a law-abiding father, subjected to the whims of a careless and cruel administration or a threat to public safety whose removal, even if it wasn't technically done by the book, is a credit to the president's agenda? And it says, absent further revelations, we'll likely never know. So it's not as black and white as people are trying to make it seem on either side. But let's go into where the case is now. So last week, the judge says that by this week, by Monday, the U.S. government was supposed to return him back to the U.S. and get him out of El Salvador by Monday at like 11:59 p.m. or something like that. And what happens is the Trump administration, of course, they appeal that. They ask for an injunction, and they actually ask for the Supreme Court to intervene, and we get an intervene. Chief Justice Roberts pauses deadline for return of Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. Chief Justice John Roberts agreed Monday to pause a midnight deadline for Trump administration to return a Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. This temporary order comes hours after the Justice Department's emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, arguing that the U.S. district judge overstepped her authority when she ordered him to be returned. The administration again conceded that it was a mistake, but they say he's no longer in U.S. custody and they have no way to get him back. So they're just like, oops, we made a mistake. Sorry, it's not our fucking business. Deal with it, whatever you want. They gave the administration until just before midnight. The judge had to facilitate his return, but was unlawful, and they said this is a deluge of unlawful injunctions that are trying to slow down Trump's administration. Justice Department's appeal was directed to Roberts because he handles appeals from Maryland. The Trump administration is separately asking the Supreme Court to allow Trump to resume deportations of Venezuelan migrants accused of being gang members. So before we get to that, because we're going to talk about that in a moment, that's where it is with the Maryland man. He's basically going to sit there in El Salvador while they figure this out. And I mean, this guy could be killed there. I mean, he's in a place where let's say he is a gang member and he was rightfully not being deported there. Well, now he's in danger. Let's say he's not a gang member and you think that's the right thing, but don't send him to a place full of violent criminals where his life could be in risk because he's just a normal dude. There's more reports we're about to go over where there's people, including gay folks, who are just rounded up as Venezuelan gang members and are now sent to this violent prison. It's not a good move for liberty, friends. It's not a good move for the country, for freedom or anything. Let's go ahead and continue here. Let's look at these other ones. Like they said that the Trump administration is also seeking to deport Venezuelan immigrants. And the decision was made by the Supreme Court yesterday. And the interesting thing is, as this article from The Conversation says, Supreme Court's decision on deportations gave both the Trump administration and the ACLU reasons to claim a victory. And this is because of this. The Supreme Court, according to Trump, upheld rule of law in our nation by allowing a president, whoever that may be, to be able to secure our borders and protect our families and our country. A great day for justice in America. In a 5-4 majority of the U.S. Supreme Court, they had just overruled a lower court that had temporarily barred the deportations, deciding that the U.S. could move ahead with its plan to send those Venezuelans to a prison in El Salvador. So Trump celebrating this. But then shortly after that, the American Civil Liberties Union, Democracy Forward, the ACLU of DC, and other groups said they won the case. In a press release, the lawyers say that this was, quote, an important victory in which the court determined that, quote, the Trump administration acted unlawfully when it removed people from this nation with no process. So how can they both claim to be victorious? And this is what it says. Both sides are claiming victory because of a per curiam opinion, an unsigned opinion of a majority of the court, allows the Trump administration and the ACLU to view their ruling from two different lenses. So Trump sees this as a win because they vacated the lower court ruling, which was preventing him from deporting Venezuelans. So he's like, cool, I can do it again. Now the federal government can continue to deport people that they claim are violent gang members. But the ACLU, they said that they won because the Supreme Court's also said that the government must give people the opportunity to challenge their removal under the Alien Enemies Act, which the government had not previously done. And this is a win for due process, whatever you think about these people. As I'm going to show you in a moment, there are certain people who are definitely not gang members that are getting swept up in this. But even if they were gang members in the United States, if you believe in liberty, if you believe in human rights, then they need to have due process as guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, even if they're not Americans. I know that's a hard idea for some of you, but we shouldn't just allow the government to round people up with no due process and ship them out, because that can take us bad places. The Venezuelans' right to due process was one of the key arguments advanced by the ACLU and its partners. So on April 9th, which is just yesterday, judges in New York and Texas agreed just 2 days after the Supreme Court's decision. So the Supreme Court says, fine, Trump, you can deport them, but you have to give them a hearing first. And then right after that, judges in New York and Texas basically confirmed that, temporarily halting the deportation of 5 Venezuelans until the government can clarify what type of notice it's going to give them and give to other people that it plans to deport. So eventually the Supreme Court will need to speak definitively about whether the Trump administration can actually use this Alien Enemies Act, which is just an insane act to be using, to deport those that it alleges are part of a foreign terrorist state organization. The court has not yet addressed that issue. This means the court will have to deal with some tricky questions down the road, but for the moment, they're avoiding all those things. And yeah, and so this argument, I think this person says that it's bad for non-citizens. We'll stay out of that for now. The point is, the Supreme Court, they handed Trump a victory on one hand, but then they also handed the people fighting for the immigrants a victory as well. And here's the update. Like I said, in Texas and in New York, judge blocks Trump from deporting immigrants without notice or a hearing. So this, I think, is a step in the right direction. A federal judge on Wednesday ordered that Trump administration must provide notice in a court hearing to immigrants the government seeks to deport under the Alien Enemies Act. Now, you're probably going to argue and say, well, Derrick, that's going to give the gang members a chance to get out of the country or to go hide. That could be so, but guess what? That's the cost of due process and of upholding certain standards that have been there in the United States. The reason that people want to come there is because of the good laws that used to exist that no longer seem to be there. So the U.S. District Judge said that told the government attorneys that there is a danger of imminent removal for non-citizen Venezuelans who are being detained by ICE throughout the country for suspicion of being gang members. They need to be protected. They need to be guaranteed a notice, guaranteed a hearing before they can be removed, she says. The judge granted a temporary restraining order that protects any prospective deportee, but it's only in the Southern District of New York, from being removed prior to receiving their due process. This order came in a case brought by the ACLU on behalf of 2 Venezuelans who are challenging the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act. Now, like I said, this was right after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. So this is still going on, and it's not going to, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm at least glad to see that for the moment, the courts seem to have succeeded in protecting due process. The ACLU attorney told the court yesterday, quote, whether or not you're a gang member, the Alien Enemies Act cannot be used under these circumstances. And he said that this is supposed to be used during active wars and, quote, not supposed to be used during peacetime against a gang. This is certainly not an invasion of U.S. territory. And I know some of you might have a different opinion on that. But the point is, for the moment, the courts are upholding due process. Now, of course, Trump and his team, they claim this is the deep state, leftist, activist judges that we need to get rid of. And, they're the problem. And that may be the case, but you need to realize there's activist judges on the left and the right. You got conservative judges, you got progressive judges, and of course they're going to fight for their team. But in this case, this person is actually doing something good and maintaining due process, which is important. Now we got a couple more here. The U.S. sent 238 migrants to Salvadorian mega prison. Documents indicate most have no apparent criminal record. This is from CBS News. It was just published the other day. This is from 60 Minutes. I actually am going to recommend you guys watch this. This is like a 13-minute report, I think. 13-minute report here. I know some of you are going to say, Derrick, CBS News, that's mainstream garbage. And yes, I get it. But as I've said before, not all of mainstream news is fake. There are actual journalists out there doing good work. And this 60 Minutes report is one of them. And look, you can like Trump's policies, you can hate immigrants all you want, but the fact remains that the data is showing that maybe as much as 3/4 of the people who are being deported, the Venezuelan gang members, as they're alleged to be, are not actually people with criminal records. This one, they show a makeup artist, a soccer player, a food, no evidence of being connected to any sort of gang. And they interview some of the family members in here who the first time they saw their family members, when they didn't know where they went, was watching these propaganda videos from El Salvador showing them being locked up and their heads shaved and dragged around and all this kind of crazy shit. Please do watch this report. It's only 13 minutes. It's going to be in the show notes because I think they did a great job on really getting to the bottom of this issue. And again, this is why I was saying, I know it can be testy. For me, it's a human issue. I don't get why some of our brothers and sisters out here in our human family are losing their humanity and just saying, well, Derrick, they came from the other side of the river. They came from the other side of the border. They came from this imaginary line on the map. They came from a different country. Their culture for them, whatever. I'm going to keep praying for you, I guess. That's all I can really do. I don't want to sit here and talk down to you. I just want to say that if we allow ourselves to be divided, whether it's over immigration or other issues, then the predator class are winning. That's exactly what they want. So we need to push back against these issues. I think left, right, conservative, independent should be united and say, look, we do have an immigration issue, but this isn't the right way. But the problem is, for the last 5 years, the conservative influencer media, much of which is garbage and not factual, has been promoting story after story, many of which are fake, about people eating dogs or invasion of violent gangs. And again, there are truth there. This is the thing. There's truth there. Yes, in Aurora, Colorado, there was an apartment complex that was recently shut down because of being taken over by gangs and criminal activity, and the police went in there and rounded up a bunch of people. That's some truth. You might have heard about that on right-wing media. But there's also a lot of fake stories, about immigrants sneaking in nuclear bombs across the border and Chinese invasion in Iran and all this crap you see on Sean Ryan and others. That is warping people's minds. So then whenever this starts to happen and they're starting to round up people, some people they've lost their humanity. They don't have compassion. They don't have empathy, and they don't have the ability to look forward and to see how these same policies that are being used against the immigrants, you better believe they're going to come back and be used against Americans. They're not just setting up this for immigrants. It's going to be for every single person, American and otherwise, who are coming in the country. And then let's look at this other one here. And I think this is also going to be applied to Americans eventually. The Department of Homeland Security announced this week that they're going to begin screening aliens' social media activity for anti-Semitism. Wow, this is a big one, huh? Today, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will begin considering aliens' anti-Semitic activity on social media and the physical harassment of Jewish individuals as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. This will immediately affect aliens applying for lawful permanent resident status, foreign students, and aliens affiliated with educational institutions linked to anti-Semitic activity. And this is all tied back to that executive order I told you guys back a few weeks ago, combating anti-Semitism. The DHS will enforce all relevant immigration laws to the maximum degree to protect the homeland from extremists and terrorist aliens, including those who support anti-Semitic terrorism, violent anti-Semitic ideologies, and anti-Semitic terror organizations such as Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Ansar Allah, aka the Houthis. And the Secretary Assistant for Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, says, quote, "There's no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers, and we are under no obligation to admit them or let them stay here. Secretary Noem has made it clear that anyone who thinks they can come to America and hide behind the First Amendment to advocate for anti-Semitic violence and terrorism, think again. You are not here. You are not welcome here." Under this guidance, the U.S. will consider social media content that indicates an alien endorsing, espousing, or promoting or supporting anti-Semitic terrorism, anti-Semitic terrorist organizations, or other anti-Semitic activity as a negative factor in their discretionary analysis when adjudicating immigration benefit requests. This guidance is effective immediately. Oh, so people thought the UK was bad. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago about the UK saying that they're going to be scanning social media activity for people coming into the country and that, you could be detained or questioned. Well, guess what? Now the same thing could happen to the U.S. I haven't been to the U.S. in a few months, since October, early November, and I'm going back next month in May, late May. And this makes me wonder if I will be harassed at the border crossing as I drive across, and if they're going to ask me about my quote unquote anti-Semitic activity on the internet, for calling out Israel, for calling out Netanyahu, for calling out the crimes of that country. I don't know, guys. I think this is not a step in the direction we want to go. And I definitely think we should push back against this. We should not be supporting this. So that is kind of my take on the overall deportations, the immigration issue, how that ties with the anti-Semitism. Because what this is about is that Trump is promoting the surveillance state, the police state, rounding people up, etc., and at the same time amplifying the Zionism and don't question Israel. It's happening on two different fronts. And at the same time, you got Robert F. Kennedy over at HHS saying that anti-Semitism is a national public health emergency. It's not moving in a good border policy. You can be for free speech and not support these things. You don't have, you can be for even supporting Israel if you want and saying, you know what? I support the state of Israel, but they shouldn't be locking people up or deporting them based on what they say about Israel. They shouldn't be saying they're going to scan social media's activity for, posts about Israel. If you have principles, you should stand on them, whether you agree with the opinion or not. That's what free speech is about. That's what individual liberty is about. That's what the United States is supposed to be about. And these actions are the exact opposite of that. We're going to take a quick break and thank another one of our sponsors, Cultivated Mind Mushrooms. We'll be right back for our final story. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now or wherever you're watching. Check out the link below the video. So if you want to check that out, just to make it clear, Cultivated Mind, you can go to consciousresistance.com. You'll see this banner we've got there on the homepage. Highly, highly encourage you guys to check that out. It's just a small company, a friend's company. They've got all kinds of mushroom extracts and products, and that's one of the ways you can support me besides buying shirts or buying it above phone and just sharing the work. All right, final story of the day, guys. Let's talk about in vitro fertilization, also known as IVF. Now, I want to make it clear right from the beginning, I'm not an expert on this topic. I'm not attempting to attack anybody who does IVF. In fact, I'd love to hear from you in the comments what your thoughts are, because I know that this typically involves people who are having trouble having babies, so they have to go through this process. And for those who are unfamiliar, it says it's a process of fertilization in which an egg is combined with sperm in vitro in glass. The process involves monitoring and stimulating the ovulatory process, then removing an ovum or ova, egg or eggs from the ovaries, and enabling sperm to fertilize them in a culture medium in a lab. After a fertilized egg, a zygote undergoes embryo culture for 2 to 6 days. It is transferred by catheter into the uterus with the intention of establishing a successful pregnancy. This is a type of assisted reproductive technology used to treat infertility, enable gestational surrogacy, and in combination pre-implementation genetic testing. And it's also one of the ways that, like, you know, men are having babies and all kinds of other stuff. It gets into a whole other thing. So, and that's kind of a picture right there showing a sperm injection, IVF right there. So as I said, I'm not an expert on this, and I totally get that some people find this necessary so they can have children when they have trouble. But these next stories are a little disturbing here. This one is coming again from the National Review. Somebody sent this to me, and of course it's got Peter Thiel's name on it. Eugenics gets a modern facelift with investment from Peter Thiel. Screening for gender and health during IVF means discarding embryonic human beings who don't match parental preferences. Now let's go ahead and start with that before I go even further. This is a conservative outlet. So those who are generally speaking against abortion and who see that as a loss of life, because you see the baby, the fetus, as a living being, and to abort that fetus is, aborting a life. There are some people who feel the same about IVF. Now, typically it involves more than just one egg. There's a lot of different eggs that are produced, and they don't all get used. So what this article is arguing is that as we move kind of more into this genetic engineering babies using IVF, where you can have designer babies where you get to pre-select for different things, like maybe you could say, okay, I want a girl. Okay, so we're going to select the egg that we can tell is going to be a girl. Or I want, this one has genes that look like it's predisposed to alcoholism. Okay, we don't want that one. This is very much like the movie Gattaca, by the way. If you've never seen Gattaca, go back and watch that. It's trippy. Unfortunately, it's coming true. Maybe it was predictive programming. It's a good movie either way. But this is arguing that the process of IVF for this sort of designer babies is, as they say, it's discarding what they call embryonic human beings. Now, again, there might be a debate there. Maybe you guys will say, Derrick, I don't think the embryos of the eggs are actually human beings yet. Maybe they're the precursor to a human being, but maybe they're not. That's up to you guys. Either way, let's go ahead and dive into this. It says that it has an image of a baby girl crawling in a pink bow, etc., with the words, "This baby was carefully selected as an embryo. Her mother screened for gender and health during IVF." This is the opening of a controversial op-ed over at the New York Times, "Should Human Life Be Optimized?" And it points to another baby and says, "Her parents selected for health." Another arrow points to a little girl with 2 pigtails drumming on a stool. Hers wanted a girl. The tumbling toddlers with their rosy cheeks and marshmallow legs set the scene for the article. However, all the happy babies pictured are missing something critical: their siblings. Now, again, this is where they say that when you screen for health during IVF, whether you're screening for genetic anomalies or you're selecting gender, either way, what happens is you choose the one that you want, and the rest of those embryos, which they call embryonic human beings or embryonic sons or daughters, they get thrown away, they get tossed out. The term screening sounds like a mammography or a colonoscopy, a test performed on a patient so that if the disease is detected, it might be cured. A better term would be winnowing. The process is analogous to a group of patients lining up to receive a scan. The healthy ones are sent on their way, while the sick ones are melted down and disposed of as medical waste. Again, some of the language here is a little bit inflammatory, but I think they're making a reasonable point here. This is what I really want to get into. This kind of genetic screening is made possible through Orchid, a startup company dedicated to advancing artificial reproductive technology, ART. Orchid offers the first of its kind pre-implementation genetic testing, PGT. Unlike other providers, it can sequence an embryo's entire genome. Orchid then runs the embryo's genome through a massive genetic data set to calculate the embryo's disease risk, or even the probable IQ, in a process known as polygenic screening. And while former PGT models were able to scan for diseases connected to a specific gene, such as Down syndrome or sickle cell anemia, Orchid's model allows for broader predictions, including the embryo's risk of developing heart disease, breast cancer, or depression. This is literally Gattaca come to life. Orchid was founded by Nuro Siddiqui, a young tech entrepreneur who cites her mother's genetic disease as inspiration for the company. Her mom had retinitis pigmentosa, a rare disease caused by a genetic mutation that ultimately leads to blindness. The hope of curing such diseases led her to found Orchid, quote, as a way to help parents anticipate just such genetic misfortunes. However, under Orchid's model, her mother would not have been cured as an embryo. Rather, her mother would have been discarded before she was born, because they would say, oh, look, she's going to have this disease. Let's not even bring her into the world. That's kind of true. Her parents may have decided that. And one of the major investors in Orchid is, you guessed it, Peter Thiel, transhumanist techno-billionaire and friend of J.D. Vance. And the founder happens to be an alumna of Thiel Fellowship. She was given a 2-year research grant funded by Peter Thiel. And Elon Musk is also a fan of her work, who gave her congratulations. You can see right here, this is back in April 2024. A year ago, she says, so incredibly proud to share 2 updates. The first baby was born using Orchid technology, and he's super cute. This is like a video. Again, this will be in the show notes. This is the first Orchid baby that was pre-selected, pre-genetic testing. I tested my own embryos with Orchid. We got so much information, and I feel confident now. This is the future of how babies will be born, she says. And they go on here. There's some more tweets you can see. And then, yeah, down here you see Elon Musk saying, congratulations. So a project funded by Peter Thiel, who we know is into transhumanism, who we know is trying to live forever, who we know is into genetic engineering and things of this sort. Thiel's investment is financially prescient. The IVF industry currently holds a $25 billion market share, a number expected to double in the next 10 years. Orchid has already met success. The first Orchid baby, named Jaff, he was born in San Francisco to his mother. And she said, quote, I actually didn't think very much about being a parent when I was younger. I was focused on my career, and I ended up getting married pretty late at 31. We started talking about having a baby. At the time, I'd already frozen some eggs just because I thought the process was cool. So we decided to do IVF so we could have genetic testing. Honestly, I just think the science of it's very cool. And the founder, she hopes more and more mothers will share the same path as her. She proclaimed on X that this represents how all the future babies will be born. And it's interesting because she said that sex is for fun, embryo screening is for babies. So she's basically saying, you know, sex isn't going to be for having babies anymore. We're going to do this embryo screening. It's going to become a more genetic process, like a more kind of mechanical process. And I think that that is really part of the problem. The rest of this article is this author's kind of opinion about Catholics and Christianity and why they think this is wrong. Some of you may share that view. But my point here is that this is, I think, just getting, like, the hospitals are already a very unnatural environment for a lot of people. I know people who are into home birthing and natural birthing, and the hospital setting can just be not a good place. I understand it's necessary for some people, but a lot of people don't want anything to do with it. Now you're saying that there's not even going to be sex anymore, which is going to, like, so there's not going to be any love, like the physical, emotional, and spiritual energy put in between the unity of male and female coming together to create a baby. I think that's a big problem. Now, somebody who's thinking from a purely material worldview would say, well, Derrick, they're still going to take the man's sperm, they're going to take the woman's egg, and they're going to implant it, and then whatever. But I mean, I don't know. It just feels like devoid of love. And you know, you could argue, is there any difference between a baby born through IVF? I'm not saying the parents aren't capable of loving them just as well as anybody who's having sex to have a baby. I'm not saying that before you attack me in the comments. But I do think this is a step towards making us, you know, having kids more and more mechanical and less human. And we know that this ties into some bigger agendas. The reason they were calling that eugenics is because of the idea that, well, we're going to select for the good babies and we're going to toss the rest out. I guess that all depends on whether or not you think that embryos qualify as a human being yet. Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. That's all up to you. I'm not going to decide that for you. But I do think this is a very weird, and you know, this is all coming on the heels of just this earlier this week, this other organization, which I also think was funded by Peter Thiel, claiming that they have just used genes to revive the extinct direwolf. And there was like the first 2 direwolf puppies, and they're howling and stuff. And I know some people have said the whole thing is like a marketing, you know, scam. It's not actually reviving an extinct animal, but still the point stands. Like, this is, to me, furthering the efforts to play God. And I do think we are creators, but I don't think we're supposed to be gods. I think that we have the creative force, and the creator breathed life into us, and we're a part of that same creative energy to manifest and to build the world that we want and to do good things. but I don't think we're supposed to be playing with the DNA of life. Now, of course, other people will argue, Derrick, this is how we're going to solve diseases, by getting into the genes, and tinkering, and CRISPR is going to solve all this stuff for us. And it's going to be a wonderful world. And, you're just living in the past. I guess so, but it does scare the shit out of me, to say the least. So yeah, what do you guys think about it? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and on this issue, on the immigration issue, on fluoride. No fluoride in Houston's water. So happy I found out about that. And yeah, that's it for today, guys. I just want to say thank you to everybody who does support my work. In the last week, I've got a big boost of support. Actually, the last couple weeks, ever since my second conversation with Ian Carroll, my recent interview on Redacted, I've got some more big interviews, big podcasts coming up that I'm not going to mention yet. And I can see that my work is starting to reach more power. More people are checking out the Pyramid of Power, by the way, as well. And that's important to me. I'm hard at home working on that, like trying to finish it. But I truly couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you to everybody who does support me, whether you support me monetarily through Buy Me a Coffee or Substack or otherwise, or through crypto, or just you share my work, you thumbs up, you comment. I read all the comments. I look at all the notifications. I'm grateful for you. You guys give me the energy to keep going. You make me feel like I'm not some crazy dude just screaming at a camera, and that maybe people are actually listening, and more importantly, that maybe people are actually applying the solutions that I promote, like the exit and build strategy. Of course, go to theconsciousresistance.com/EXB to learn more about the exit and build strategy. And again, my website is theconsciousresistance.com. Find me over there, sign up for our newsletter, bookmark us there. We're going to end with another music video. This week, we're going to play Energy Ball. I played it on last week's show. I'm going to play it again because it's a good vibe. It's a good jam. This is from Sister Sahida Absara, who is the wife of Dub FX, who I'm going to be performing with very soon at Rise and Vibes Festival. And I'm so stoked. I hope you guys will enjoy this. Go out there, enjoy the sunshine if you got some. Hug your loved ones. Let's regain our humanity and not let these psychopaths take it from us. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends.
Sometimes you're given all the facts, so you never get it back. And you can't put your finger on it, the flow is out of whack. You're feeling kinda strange in the funky interchange. Feel a little insecure, was it something that you said? You feel depleted, defeated, the garden isn't weeded. Feel there's something missing, so you give it what is needed. Some water, some juice, a little fertilizer. Lively up the conversation, little appetizer. It's the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball. If you're passing it on, I'll be passing it back. I'll be sharing all the energy and holding it all. It's the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball. If you're passing it on, I'll be passing it back. I'll be sharing all the energy and holding it all. Not all people are your people, fly like an eagle. Rise above the power, play your royal and your regal. Get a bird's eye view over mountains and valleys. Use your third IQ through the streets and the alleys. You'll be alright with your hindsight, delight in hindsight. Pull back your shoulders so your heart can shine bright. Just stay open, stay kind. In your heart and your mind, watch the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball, the energy ball. If you're passing it on, I'll be passing it back. Sharing all the energy, your heart in it all.
Thank you, I take the energy ball and have a ball with it. I share the glow cause you know I want us all lifted. Rise up with my sis, yes, that's a gift. Feeling safe with my brothers, enough to share, that's a gift. Let the energy uplift, dissolve and assist. On a mission well equipped to raise consciousness. Pure energy and frequency, yes, the vibe's lit. Phase shift in my spaceship with a plot twist. But the energy's steady even when the fog thick. Jedi mind tricks in the mist, hard and full effect. Take the ball, what's next? Live and direct when my energy is focused with the love and intent. See what happens with the full sand. All in, concentrate the energy and visualize the wind. Grounded in an essence, firmly rooted deep within. All in, see what happens, full sand.
Don't give away your power, finding love in the wrong places. Acceptance isn't necessary, but loving yourself is. It's revolutionary. Don't give away your power, finding love in the wrong places. Acceptance isn't necessary, loving yourself is. Don't give away your power, finding love in the wrong places. Acceptance isn't necessary, but loving yourself is revolutionary. Don't give away your power, finding love in the wrong places. Acceptance isn't necessary, but loving yourself is revolutionary.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.